Welcome to Ella Talk, 100 Days of Animation, day 24. I feel like I used to do funny things at the beginning of these things, but I'm not anymore. So maybe I should start that again. Maybe not. Either way, tomorrow we will be a quarter of the way done with this thing, and I don't believe that I am a quarter of the way done with this project, which is frustrating. But I also moved and had a bunch of garbage happen. And now I have a little bit more time because my life is evening out a little bit more. So, before we do much else, though, we're going to travel back in time. Dream sequence. That was weird. I'm not that guy. Anyway, this is what I said yesterday. And probably what I'm going to do is speed the whole thing up and tell you about it tomorrow. Because I have to get up at 5:30 in the morning. I do not do 5:30 in the morning, and it is already 11:35. So anyway, as promised, today I am going to show you what I did yesterday by doing a similar thing on a different attribute. What we're going to do is I'm going to create an expression inside of a pre-comped series of things, right? So a group of layers that are pre-comped that I pick whip the variable of that expression outside of that composition to the main composition controls. If that doesn't make any sense, what it means is that when I'm animating, I can change things about my character without having to go into individual pieces of that character. For example, I have a wiggle on his legs and his hand or whatever, and I can control the amount and the kind of the violence and the rapidity. So it's the frequency and the amplitude, basically the amount of space that his hands gesticulate and how fast they gesticulate without having to go into the pre-comp that contains the arm layers and the hands and all of that, right? And so I just have a very simple setup of a series of pre-comps, and then inside of those pre-comps, I have variables inside of equations that control the wiggle, and those variables are linked to sliders in the main thing. Let me show you what I'm talking about right here. All right, Sparky, here's the deal. I have this slider control, which is actually just a text layer on my main composition, right? And so I'm going to open this up here so you guys can see what's going on. You'll notice that I have pre-comps. I have left leg, right arm down, right arm up, left arm down, right? All these things, okay? And then inside of those things, on some of them, I have expressions. Let me move this out of the way so you can see that expression. So this is a wiggle, okay? And that wiggle, if I grab this dude, what's going on? Why can't I grab him? Oh, he's locked. Weird that that's over there. Okay, so that wiggle pivots on the anchor point, all right? And so his chest pivots this way. Ugh, stop locking everything. Okay. His head pivots kind of at the base of where his neck would meet his skull, pivots that way, right? And so the arms, they have kind of a position wiggle rather than a rotation wiggle. His abdomen, thorax, abdomen. Am I right? I can never remember. Anyway, it's labeled butt here because I'm 12 years old. And right here, you know, that wiggles from this point. And you'll also notice, where's my parenting? Seems like somebody changed everything here. Okay, so you'll notice that most everything is linked to the chest or the beetle control. The beetle control is a null object, which I believe is this one, so that I can resize stuff and whatever, right? Anyway, this whole guy, he moves together. And so I can grab him and he'll all move together, right? Even though he's made up of a bunch of different pieces. And that's what parenting does. Anyway, so This chest, for example, let's go chest, and we will look at rotation, and we'll look at the rotation expression, okay? Now, let me show you how to get that rotation expression. So I'm just going to click on this and delete it, okay? Now, what you do is you come over to this thing, and you hold the Alt key, and you click on your little stopwatch, right? And then what you're doing is you're doing that on the attribute that you want to do that on. And so for this case, I want to do it on rotation, okay? But I mean, you could do it on pretty much anything. So I could put these on the anchor point, the position, scale, whatever, right? I mean, I could ghost him, have his opacity, have some sort of expression. Then over here, you have this expressions menu. This expressions menu, since I've only been doing this for 20 days-ish, and I only learned expressions about 4 days ago, is full of things that I have no idea what they do. But I've learned 2 of them pretty well. So these loop ones are awesome. I love them. I don't understand a lot of this, but then you have wiggle. Now, what wiggle seems to do is it adds kind of sliding variables. And so if I put this in here like this, and I put a frequency, which is how many times are we going to cycle through kind of this sliding variable each second. So it's each second. And I go space equals space. And if I were to do it 1, then it would go through, you know, the little thing that it does 1 time every second. And if I do 15, then it's going to go through 15 times every second, right? So the higher the number is on the frequency here, the faster it'll do its thing, whatever its thing is, okay? I'm going to put just 1. The amplitude is based on what property you have over here. And so when you do an amplitude wiggle on a position, you're dealing with pixels, because that's what position moves in, is it moves in X and Y on pixels. But when you're dealing with rotation, we have 360 degrees in a circle. And so you're not dealing with pixels, you're dealing with degrees of that circle, right? You follow me? 360 would be all the way around, okay? And so for this, I don't want his chest to wiggle like he's not possessed, so I don't want it to go all the way around. I really just want it to kind of go back and forth a couple degrees, right? And so if I put amplitude space equals space, and we just do like 5, right? Then what'll happen when I play this, so I click away, okay, is you will see, it's got to render a little bit, but you'll see that his chest tilts slightly. It's not doing it just yet. We haven't made it a full second yet, though. To illustrate this point, I'm going to turn the frequency up to 5 and the amplitude up to, I don't know, 30 degrees, right? So watch what happens. So this is going to freak it out, because that's a lot. Okay. So now you'll see that his butt and his head and his arms are also wiggling with this, and that is because they're parented to it. So as it rotates, so does everything else that is attached to it, right? And so I'm doing all of this without keyframes. I'm not using any keyframes yet, and I can put keyframes on top of this, and it will still wiggle within those keyframes from the relative position of those keyframes, if that makes sense. So that's cool, right? Let's turn this back down to like 9, and we'll put frequency at 3. And it actually doesn't matter what those are at the moment. Okay, so that's going to give me this little wiggle deal. Okay, and then I'm going to pick whip the slider. Now, pick whipping is this little swirly snail thing, and you use it for a number of things. If I want this layer to be parented to something, then I can grab it and I can parent it like that. Notice that changed, right? but I want it to be parented to Beetle control, so it changed. So what it actually does is it selects things and then inputs the text for you into whatever you're doing at the time. And so from parenting, it does that. But if I do this and I open up my sliders and I add a new slider, effects and presets, I type in the word slider, I drag this slider control over to this layer. It adds a new slider control. I can right click, I can go rename, and then I can put, let's put chest, rotation, and we'll do frequency. No, we'll do amplitude. Okay. I can do another one for frequency or whatever else, right? But now what I do is I want to scroll down a little bit here. Okay. And we're doing amplitude. So I highlight amplitude, just the variable that I want to change. So consider this like an X, or E equals MC squared, and you can kind of like replace those letters or whatever. It's a variable. And so with this selected, I slide over here, I grab my pick whip, I drag it up, and I drop it onto that slider, which didn't work because it's actually not there. And so I have to drop it on the slider itself. So with this selected, click on it again, select, pick whip. Why isn't it doing it? Pick whip, the slider. There we go. Okay, now you'll notice that 9 or whatever it was just got replaced with everything amplitude equals, and then it goes this comp layer head, blah, 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 blah. And that's all of the stuff to say that when I go to this slider and I slide this up, he's going to rotate a lot because I just changed the number of degrees that he's going to go, right? And so I know that I never want him to go too far. And so what I'm actually going to do is right click on this edit value on this slider. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to say the slider range, I can have 0, which would mean no rotation because it's 0 degrees. But I don't want to go all the way up to 100 and I don't want to go all the way up to 360. And so what I want to do is probably roughly like 35. Let's say 35 would be max. And I can adjust this later if I want to. But basically what it's doing is you'll notice that when I change these values, if I come over here like this and I go down, it adds a keyframe to that slider, which when the playhead hits that keyframe, the value of that keyframe, right? The value, this number, so the slider just spits out a number, gets input into this equation as that variable. And that's how sliders work. The long and the short of it, or the simple way to put that, is this slider spits out a number that you can plug into things like that, right? Now we've got a little bit of a problem here. And you can kind of, let's see, error at line 1, property rotation of this layer chest. All right. So anyway, there's something going wrong with it, but that's basically how it works. You select something, you pick whip the slider with it, you set the minimum and maximum of that slider, you slide it around and it changes it from one thing to another. So you can tween from super wiggle to like no wiggle or whatever the expression is, from keyframe to keyframe of that slider to other things. Okay, I got it working. I figured out what the error was. And let me show you how I did that because that might be useful. So basically, it worked before. And so one thing, if you get this little error thing, like if I type an X in here and get out, right, it's going to say, this project contains an expression error. And then if you click right here, it's going to say something that makes no sense. Maybe this makes sense to people that aren't me. I don't know JavaScript and this is whatever. At best, it gives you like a line. So if I had multiple expressions, it'll help you there. So what I'm going to do is I know that the only thing that changes is this amplitude. And so I'm going to change that to 3. And then when I click away, that error goes away. I know that it was that variable that had a problem. And so I'm going to click on that, select it again, make sure that this is expanded, pick whip, boom, click away, no error. And so now, when I go here, Okay. And that slider is set to 0 or 0 here. Okay. And the next one, it's set to 10. The next one is set to 0. I'll pre-render this and you'll see what happens. Okay. Starts off no wiggle in the chest. And then the wiggle will build. Watch this number here. The wiggle will build and build and build and build and build. Okay. It'll hit this keyframe, which is 10. And then it's going to taper off back down to 0. And it won't wiggle anymore. And so I can tween the amplitude of that wiggle, right? The amount or the number of degrees that it kind of does that little random number generator or whatnot. Okay, and then so it's going back down to 0. And so let me show you what that looks like. So we'll go back. Okay, and we go from 0 to wiggle to nothing. Pretty cool. So if I want to change this again, I can go over here or whatever. And let's say I want to go above my slider and I want to go like 36 degrees. You know, hit return. Okay. Then I'm going to back off this. And everything freezes up and it starts thinking. It'll start going even more violently now. It should go way out there. Yeah, see how big that is? It swung all the way out this way, and I was going to swing all the way out this way. And so that's the amount. Then it's going to taper off down to 0 again. So that's a slider situation. And I don't like any of these keyframes, so I'm going to delete them. And thanks for watching. My name's Cory Kerr. You can catch my stuff at kuretake.com. And I've got a little thing on social media. You just click a tab and it shows you everything that I've got. All right. So subscribe if you haven't already. Get the little notification dealio. And we will catch you tomorrow. Day 24 out.